January 2002. I'm still picture framing for frame art galleries and still reading a lot of stuff. And there's a lot of stuff here, so I'm going to jump right in. But first, there's a lot of media tie in stuff. Just a warning. Not all of it's media tie in, but a lot of it is, including the first book that I read in January of 2002, which is Star Trek SCE, Book 1, Have Tech Will Travel, by Keith R.A. DiCandido, Kevin Dillmore, Christy Golden, Dean Wesley Smith, and Dayton Ward. Now, SCE stands for Starfleet Corps of Engineers, and this is the first 4 novellas, I suppose, short stories or novellas in an e-book series about the Star Trek Starfleet Corps of Engineers. And one of the main characters is, let me take a look here, Sonia Gomez, who's a character from Star Trek The Next Generation. The first story actually starts with the Next Generation crew, Picard and all of them. And but eventually leads into our main characters, our main ship, which is the USS Da Vinci, which is captained by Captain David Gold. But Sonia Gomez is our character from the actual TV show. There may be some others sprinkled in, but basically it's just Star Trek problems that are solved by the engineers, Scotty type characters. As a matter of fact, I think, did Scotty start the Corps of Engineers back in the day? Who knows? But just 4 quick, interconnected stories with mainly new cast of characters. And again, solving problems, whether it's doomsday devices or things that don't, doomsday devices that work a little too well to things that aren't working at all. How are the engineers going to solve it? Fun stories in a sci-fi world, a well-known sci-fi world. Next up, we have Such Pain by Don Basingthwaite. This is a World of Darkness mage book from White Wolf Publishing, and our main character is Aaron Barry. He was an international playboy till his father died, and he inherited his father's huge business. But it also means he has to go back to his childhood home where scary things are happening. Excuse me. Mage, of course, in the whole World of Darkness thing, is the magic users. And this takes place in that world. Don't remember much about it. And Mage, never my favorite of the World of Darkness stuff. Followed that with Bikini Planet by David Garnett. In this book, we have a cop named Wayne Norton in Las Vegas back in the 60s, but he's cryogenically frozen, wakes up 300 years later, joins sort of the galactic police force, and goes to another planet, a couple other planets, actually, fighting crime. This is a light-hearted, but not necessarily overtly funny sci-fi adventure book. It's not funny like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy funny. It has a blurb from Neil Gaiman on the cover. But Neil Gaiman doesn't actually say anything at all about the book. It's something like, when I hear these 2 words in the title, it makes me think of bikinis, and it makes me think of planets, and it makes me think of David Garnett. Take that however you like. It doesn't say anything at all about the book. But again, it's a very light adventure science fiction book. Next, The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension by Earl Mac Rauch. Rauch. Not sure how you say his name. This is the novelization, companion novel, however you want to look at it, for the movie The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension, which is a movie I absolutely love, starring Peter Weller, Jeff Goldblum, John Lithgow. Um, oh, why can't I think of his name? Christopher Lloyd. Uh, um, Tons of great people. Just a crazy, very Doc Savage, pulpy type of story. So Buckaroo Banzai is he's a scientist and a surgeon and a rock star and maybe some other things, and he has the uh, a group of experts in other things that are his core group. He's in the middle of a surgery. He recruits Jeff Goldblum's character to be part of his group, and meanwhile, John Lithgow is this scientist that's in a mental hospital, and it has to do with an who breaks out, and it has to do with an alien invasion, and from the eighth dimension, and it's the movie is fantastic in my opinion. I think you have to have a certain type of taste. A lot of people I don't think are going to get it, or they might just say it's crap. But I love the movie, and the book expands on a bunch of stuff, really gets into some of the details of it, since the movie and the book are written by the same person. Um, he can expand on all of these different things. I actually have a sequel right over there. You can't see it, but I can, that I have not read yet. I may move it up to the top of my pile, but things keep bumping it. But The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension, Earl Mac Rauch, or however you say his name. And again, I should watch that movie again. I have a super special edition of the movie. Absolutely love it. So, good book. Then we have Torsos by John Peyton Cook. This is a fictionalized version of the story or the event of the Torso killings in Cleveland, Ohio. Elliot Ness as the safety director in Cleveland, and the serial killer that we had here that was never caught. Very Jack the Ripper-esque. But in this book, it does have Elliot Ness in it, but the main character is actually Detective Hank Lambert. Can't read my own handwriting. And he is a closeted gay man. He has a wife and kids, but he's actually gay, and it takes place back, Elliot Ness times, 30s, 40s, and in the one description I was reading, or maybe it was one of the reviews, it said, that Detective Lambert is essentially breaking the law every time he goes to these underground gay clubs and stuff in Cleveland. But the way the story is told, essentially, because Lambert knows these sort of underground places, he has access to information that will help him or may help him solve the Torso killings. He has sources, he knows people, he knows places to go that Elliot Ness and the regular cops, I hate to say it that way, don't necessarily have. So it's an interesting telling of this story. Of course, again, the killer was never actually caught. Nobody knows who it was. So this is just an author's... he takes a lot of the real history, but mixes in this fictional stuff. And I'm fascinated by Elliot Ness and the Torso killings, this era of Cleveland and crime. So it's a very interesting book. I wasn't sure. There's a number of Torso books that tell this story, but add a supernatural element to it, and I wasn't sure if this was one of those. But it's not. It adds a gay element to it. All right. Then we have Firebreak by Richard Stark. This is a Parker novel, one of the more recent ones after the Parker comeback. Let's see. This first came out in 2001. And in this one, Parker is in Montana. Wants to rob a hunting lodge where this guy has tons of, what does it say? A dot-com millionaire hides a gallery of stolen old masters. But being in Montana, Parker's out of his element. Things aren't going to go his way because it's a Parker novel. So, what's going to happen? That's the question. And as I said, it's a Parker novel. It's good stuff, man. Donald E. Westlake, a.k.a. Richard Stark, writes some great, gritty crime novels, and Parker is a great character. It's a fantastic series. I followed that up with The Buck Passes Flynn by Gregory MacDonald, part of the Flynn series, a character who's fun. Not as... I don't like Flynn as much as I like Fletch, but Flynn is a Boston detective, but maybe he's not really a Boston detective. Maybe he's some sort of secret agent. Who knows? It's all very mysterious. He's very Catholic, wife, lots of kids. But he takes on weird cases that like a normal detective wouldn't necessarily take on. He knows things and has contacts. In this book, someone's trying to destroy the world economy, at least the U.S. economy, and Flynn's trying to take him down. I like this one. I like the end in particular. And not to say Flynn's a bad character. Flynn's a very fun character, just not Fletch fun. But The Buck Passes Flynn by Gregory MacDonald. Do rec if you like mysteries and quirky, interesting characters, the Flynn books, you could do worse, is what I'm trying to say, than reading the Flynn books. All right. I forgot to look one of these up. I skipped it somehow, but that's okay. Next up, we're going to get into a lot of media tie-in stuff. Next up, Legend of the Five Rings, Clan War, Fourth Scroll, The Phoenix by Stephen D. Sullivan. This is a book, part of a series that's set in the Legend of the Five Rings role-playing game. It's feudal Japan with magic and monsters and the different clans. If you're building your character to play the role-playing game, you choose a clan, which sort of gives you your basic identity. The Phoenix are the magic users, and they're trying to fight against the monster hordes that are attacking. Rokugan is the name of the land, and they're looking for the Black Scrolls. It's fun if you like feudal Japan type stuff, and throwing in some mystery and magic and monsters and things. Legend of the Five Rings is entertaining. After that, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Tales of the Slayer, Volume 1. I do not have an editor or authors written down because there were no editors listed on the cover of the book. And far too many authors to write down because this is an anthology, plus none of them were listed on the front of the book. But this is an anthology set in the Buffy the Vampire Slayer universe that tells the stories of slayers from the past, going as far back as the authors want to go. Ancient Greece. There's one that deals with Elizabeth Bathory. There's one in the French Revolution. And we do have just a few of the authors that are in here. You've got Nancy Holder, Yvonne Navarro, Greg Rucka. So a bunch of different authors just giving us stories of a bunch of different vampire slayers throughout history. If you're a fan of Buffy, I think you'd enjoy this book. I did. Then we have Legend... Okay. This is I have no information for these next two books, essentially. Legend of the Five Rings, Clan War, Fifth Scroll, The Crab by Stan Brown, and I followed that with Legend of the Five Rings, Clan War, Sixth Scroll, The Dragon by Ree Sosby. And looking these up, I could find no information about the plot of either of these books. I checked Amazon; that's my first source. I check Goodreads, and then I'll Google and try to find sources like Legends of the Five Rings wiki or something. Couldn't find anything about them, but it's continuing this series that might even be the last of them. The Legends of the Five Rings. So the last two, if there are only 6 clans, I'm not sure. The Crab and the Dragon. Basically, each clan has a specific trait or characteristic, and so that's going to be the focus of these stories. As again, I believe in this series, it's just the monsters from the outside invading Rokugan. 22 years ago, I don't remember the specifics of these stories. So we'll move on to Taming a Seahorse by Robert B. Parker. Regular viewers of this series will have heard me speak of this a number of times. This is Spencer book. It is the second appearance of April Kyle. Her first appearance, one of my favorite Spencer books. And then this one, not quite as good, but good. So, the end of the first book with April Kyle, who Spencer was hired to find her, she was a teenage runaway, has a very interesting ending. And I don't want to spoil that, which makes this difficult. So somebody calls Spencer in Taming a Seahorse. Somebody calls Spencer because April Kyle has gone missing again. And into this shadowy world that I don't want to say anything about. And so Spencer's trying to find her, get her out of trouble if need be. It's the nature of what happens at the end of the first book that makes this one, I think, so very interesting, aside from the fact that Spencer's just a great character. Robert B. Parker's a great writer. Taming a Seahorse, Robert B. Parker. It's a great book. All right, this is the book I forgot to look up. I don't know why, somehow. I just missed it. Witchblade Talons by John DeChancy. Witchblade is a comic book, and I don't remember the publisher. I feel like it's Image, but not necessarily. It's about a cop female cop, who finds a thing that will cover her in this very scanty organic armor, and like swords will pop out and stuff, if I remember correctly. There was a TV show made based on this. I didn't really read the comic. I did watch a little bit of the TV show, but I do like to read novels based on comic books. So it's a novel based on that comic book. I can't tell you the plot or anything because I don't remember from 22 years ago, and I forgot to look it up. But if you're a fan of the comic book or the TV show Witchblade, there's a novel out there for you. John DeChancy is a good writer, so I assume it's at the very least, a decent book. All right, here we go. We're almost done. Next up, Star Trek SCE Book 2, Miracle Workers, Keith R.A. DeCandido, Kevin Dillmore, David Mack, and Dayton Ward. So, of course, obviously, the second volume of the Star Trek Starfleet Corps of Engineers books. This reprints number 5 through 8 of the e-book series. And again, I'm not sure if they're just short stories or novella length. I think they're novella length. So 4 stories featuring the Starfleet Corps of Engineers, the USS Da Vinci, Captain David Gold, Sonia Gomez, all the engineers just flying around, solving problems through engineering. It's pretty fun stuff. And then finally, okay, so the penultimate book that I read in January of 2002 is Star Trek The Next Generation Double Helix Book 1 Infection by John Gregory Betancourt. And this is the first in a 6-book series, and on Arachia 3, I believe it is, there's an outbreak. Think basically COVID, coronavirus, killing, wiping out the population. The USS Enterprise D, Captain Picard, and all of them, the Next Generation folks, they're trying to figure out what it is, how to stop it, and Data and Tasha Yar, right? The Denise Crosby character. I think they go down to the planet, maybe because they can't get it. I don't recall. Dr. Beverly Crusher working on a cure, and then Troy catches it. So the stakes are even higher. So this is setting up this infection, as it were. And then the last book that I read in January of 2002 is Star Trek The Next Generation Double Helix Book 2, Vectors, by Dean Wesley Smith and Kristen Catherine Rush. And now, even though all 6 of these books are labeled Star Trek The Next Generation, they hop around from group to group, and they take place in the Next Generation timeline, or time. Like, if Tasha Yar's in it, then it's got to be season 1, that time. So the second book actually deals with, I had to write it down, Dr. Pulaski, Gul Dukat, and Kira Nerys. I'm never sure I can never remember how to pronounce her last name correctly. So you've got Dr. Pulaski temporarily takes over for Dr. Crusher on Next Generation. Gul Dukat is he Kardashian? Or the other one. He's not going to be introduced into the continuity of the show for a while, nor is Kira. But they're all characters that's, at least Kira and Gul Dukat, I think, are very prominent in Deep Space Nine, which hasn't actually happened yet. Anyway, this infection is now spreading throughout the galaxy, and so you've got these sort of enemies coming together to try and fight it, and it's sort of focused on, I don't know if Pulaski was ever on Deep Space Nine, but it's focusing on these other characters that will eventually go on to be part of Deep Space Nine. So it's Star Trek Double Helix Book 2, Vectors, Dean Wesley Smith, Kristen Catherine Rush. And that is everything that I read in January of 2002. Spoilers for February. The first 4 books are the last 4 in this Double Helix series. So, there you go. Like I said, a lot of media tie-ins, but a few other things sprinkled in there. Question for this video, not sure if I've brought it up before or not. Are you a Star Trek fan? If you're not, why not? If you are, what is your favorite version of Star Trek, or what are your favorite characters in Star Trek? I obviously am a Star Trek fan. And probably, now I haven't watched everything. I haven't watched the new stuff, the Paramount stuff, except for the first episode of Discovery, and I did not like that. And I have watched the first episode of Lower Decks, and I really, really enjoyed that. But I grew up with the original series, so of course I was always a big fan of Kirk and Spock and all of them. And I love the Mirror Universe, Evil Spock, and that stuff. But Next Generation, I think, after the first couple of seasons. It was still a little clunky. Found its footing and told some amazing stories. Deep Space Nine could be silly, but could get very, very dark. I didn't watch Enterprise, and I did watch a little bit of Voyager, but I think eventually I kind of just lost track of everything. So, favorite. Technically, my favorite is a series of books that are going to be in next week's video. Are going to start there, and that's the New Frontier stuff by Peter David. But and I've actually only seen 2 out of the 3 what's his name movies, the new ones with Chris Pine, J.J. Abrams. I've seen the first 2. I enjoyed those well enough. But probably if I had to pick from the media other than books, I'd say Next Generation. Although if I watch more Lower Decks, I might pick that. I really want to check out Strange New Worlds. Right? That's the name of the series, the new series that's the original Enterprise, pre-Captain Kirk. I hear that's a lot of fun and that it's basically just Adventure of the Week. And since I now have access to Paramount Plus, I can check it out. But what about you? Do you like Star Trek? What's your favorite? If you don't like it, why not? You can just say, not a science fiction fan. That's simple enough. Let me know in the comments below. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put those in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post spoiler warning. We try to be polite here on my channel. Please like, share, and subscribe. All the usual YouTube stuff. And if you'd care to follow me on other social media, my Twitter is @Ronan5757. My Instagram, where I post pictures of books, comic books, board games, fuzzy animals, is Eric Smith5757. That's Eric with a K, ERIKSMITH5757. If you're on Blue Sky, I am @EL Smith. That's all I've got for you this week. So until next week, read more books.